Now, being a nonprofit, as I've said for the last 2 episodes, the Atheist Community of Austin does not engage in any electioneering activities or endorse any candidate. But if you happen to be in Austin and you would like some friends to hang out with on election night, I'm going to blog about this because we've just decided basically we're going to open up the Atheist Community of Austin building for a viewing party on Tuesday night starting at 6 p.m. That's at 1507 West Koenig Lane, where you would also be coming to watch the show. So I would say bring your own food and bring your own bottle. Bring a lot of bottles if you think you'll need it. So hope you'll come join us. We got a lot of big TVs and stuff in here, so it seems like a good place, as good a place as any to come.
Well, sounds like fun. I'd like to be able to come up, but I probably won't be able to.
Well, so, yeah. Some of us have busy lives.
Yes. But it's good that you brought up the election because I've been hearing from lots of people on both sides of the aisle that that there's a risk of the election being either rigged or hacked or something. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of interesting because the people telling me this can't articulate any method by which the election could be rigged or hacked, but they're absolutely certain that this could happen and we need to be on the lookout for this. Mm-hmm. We don't know what to be on the lookout for because they can't tell me how this would happen. But I wanted to kind of put this out there for everybody. Relax. Your democracy is not being hacked. This is not an episode of Mr. Robot. You know, we're fine. Our elections occur in public places with lots of observers from all political parties. You can have members of the press standing there doing exit polling. In fact, pollsters do exit polling. That's how come you can get the results so fast, even after, minutes after the polls close. In some cases, they can call an election for one candidate or another. So it's not like these things happen behind closed doors and nobody knows. It's just really hard to tamper with the results of an election in this country.
One thing about the U.S. election system is that it is massively distributed because every state and every county are responsible for counting their own votes. So while it is actually hypothetically possible for some group to try to influence the election on a small scale. So you could have somebody conveniently losing some ballots or something like that. And that is absolutely a problem. But it would be very complicated to have some kind of mass coordinated conspiracy with all these officials who are elected by so many different people around the country.
Yeah. And in fact, when situations have occurred where, for example, small county level elections have been disrupted by some means, it's been fairly low tech stuff that people have used. Ballot box stuffing is an example, or as Russell mentioned, losing a bunch of ballots or something. Those are fairly low tech, and actually they're pretty easy to detect when this happens. Mm-hmm. People actually get caught trying to do this stuff. The biggest way that you can influence an election in this country is something that happens all the time. It's called gerrymandering, where you cut the districts up in a way that favors one political group or another. And that happens a lot, and it typically disenfranchises minority voters. So that is absolutely something that goes on. We're aware of that. I recently saw something where someone was talking about there's actually a computer algorithm that will set the districts up that it's basically agnostic when it comes to political parties. So the computer algorithm doesn't care what political party. It basically cuts districts up based on population.
Yeah.
And so that would be the fairest way to decide, what the districts should look like. But, each state governs how it sets its districts. So.
Right. And this matters to us in Austin, by the way, because, for example, here in Austin, the voting results weren't going in a way that's favorable to a particular party. So they redrew the district so that what Austin looks like now is that it's divided up into 4 pieces, and each piece is sort of smushed with something that's like 100 miles away, so that the north part of Austin is actually part of, does it go all the way to Dallas? I'm not sure.
I don't know, but yeah, the districts are very weird. That. But yeah, and you've got pieces of, on the southern side, you've got pieces that go all the way almost to San Antonio, through some strange, it makes no sense, unless you're trying to create safe districts, and that's basically what's happening. So, we could fix this with a little bit of technology that would basically eliminate human bias when drawing districts, but that requires each state to be on board with that, since the states control how the districts are drawn.
And as a data type guy, I think I've hit on this point a few times in the last couple of weeks at least, but there are 2 types of errors that people are concerned about when running scientific tests on something, and that is like false positives and false negatives, which are called type 1 and type 2 errors. And a lot of the people who focus on the danger of elections being rigged are worried about a false positive, where somebody gets to vote and they shouldn't have because they are assuming the name of a dead guy, which, according to any type of investigation that's been done into this, either pretty much doesn't happen or happens like at a rate of much, much less than 1%. People are much less commonly talking about false negatives, where people are either intimidated into not voting or actively prevented from voting by people who are claiming that they're trying to commit some sort of fraud. And dealing with having fair elections means balancing out the 2 concerns and dealing with the extent of the problem and the legitimacy of the concerns and how big an impact it would have in one case or another. So you certainly can have a situation where a lot of states set up laws to try to prevent people from voting who shouldn't, and wind up making it impossible for lots of people to vote who should. And that's a problem. Yeah, it's a huge problem, actually. And like you said, the risk of someone voting who shouldn't vote is so low as to be an almost non-existent problem. So all of this voter ID stuff and having to provide all this documentation to cast a ballot, that's basically there to solve a problem that essentially doesn't really exist. I think I saw something recently where there have been something like 30 cases of that in about 1 billion votes cast. Right. So that's such an astronomically small talking in number. The last several decades to aggregating every election.
Right. Yeah. And so basically it's not possible to influence the outcome of an election with something that happens that infrequently. It is possible to influence the outcome of an election by preventing large groups of people from voting. And we're talking minorities, students, the homeless, poor people, elderly. There's all kinds of groups of people that, with these voting identification laws, tend to be systematically disenfranchised. That's a huge problem. If there's a rigging or a hacking of the vote, that's how it's being done. That and gerrymandering. But those are voter suppression and gerrymandering, that sort of thing. That's we've known about that stuff for a long time, and those are fairly low-tech things.
Yeah, and our audience may well be asking, what does any of this have to do with atheism? And the answer is simply that we feel like it's important to generally promote skepticism and, numeracy, numerical literacy. Yes. So we like to point out common misconceptions, whether or not they are particularly focused on God.
Yeah, and the fact that, just the fact that it's remotely possible that someone could affect the outcome of an election, And even that someone wants to, it doesn't mean they're going to have the means to do that or the opportunity to do that. Again, because Russell pointed out, our elections are massively distributed. So they would have to basically find a way to get into lots of different voting systems throughout the country to systematically influence the outcome of a presidential election.
Right.
So that's very, very difficult to do.
Having said that, I'll just reiterate what I've said for the past couple of weeks, which is our audience, I think, is smarter than the average voter. And so don't be discouraged into thinking that your vote doesn't matter because it's going to be stolen. Get out there and vote. Not
Right.
telling you who to vote for.
Right. That's it.
All right.
Vote on Tuesday.
This Tuesday, 2 days from now.
You cannot text your vote.
Vote, and then if you're in Austin, come to 1507 West Koenig Lane and get together with a bunch of atheists, drink some stuff, and enjoy or don't enjoy
Yes.
the
outcome,
results
yes.
coming in, as is your want.